one of the great poems of the 20th century, which says it better than a sermon. One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day. Accept the fluster of lost door keys. The hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster. Places and names, and where it was you had meant to travel, none of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster. Some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent, I missed them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, your joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like, like disaster. I am sure that I read those words for the first time in some high school English class. Perhaps I flipped through a Norton anthology of poems somewhere along the way and thought, isn't that sad? I've always thought it was a sad poem, that one. A poem about grief, about the bittersweetness of all that we have lost, about the apparently sorrowful reality that winning was never a lasting goal in the first place, and that people who proclaim themselves to be eternally winners are usually jerks. I have always thought that poem was so sad. But when I think about it now, it seems to me that was when I thought losing was still something I wanted to avoid. Perhaps that was when I was naive enough to imagine that losing was something I could basically avoid if I worked hard enough. These days, I don't know much, but I know just enough to know that isn't true. And when I read Bishop's words again, they land differently in my heart. Here on the cusp of fall, right? On this weird faux fall weekend when we all dug out our sweaters from the closet and some of us went in search for school supplies, here at the passing edge of summer that seemed so long when it stretched out in front of us a few months ago and now seems so very passing short. Now at this time of turning for our country and for our world, when old ways of being, when what we were is passing away, and what we will yet become together is undecided, now in the midst of all of these turnings, I read those words differently. In her poem, Bishop challenges us to lose something every day. Accept the fluster, she says. Lose something every day until you are so skilled at the losing that you can lose further, lose faster. Ultimately, she is asking us to bless these things we hold on for just a time and to let them go with love wherever all the passing things go. Lose things, she implies, so that you can look up toward a horizon over which something new is coming to you. And so the poem, as I read it in this passing season, is not just sad. It is not even really a poem about grief. Rather, it is a hymn of praise for all things passing. It is a tribute to the ephemeral. It is a spiritually grounding invitation to find the beauty that can only be known in the moving, the benedictions that only come at the end of stories we have so loved telling. Like the passage from Ecclesiastes, which has proclaimed for thousands of years that there is a time for everything and a season for every purpose under heaven. Elizabeth Bishop's poem is a love song to all that is passing, and the ephemeral, that which is slipping right by, I believe it is ever so worthy of our love and our praise and our poetry. The word ephemeral is a kind of Latin-Greek mash-up. It's a combo word squished together from the root components epi, meaning of, and hemera, meaning a day. So at its root, ephemeral means of a day, as in lasting a day, contained within a day, which is why Ephemeroptera are a group of some 2,000 insect species whose whole entire life cycle is captured within the span of a day or a matter of a few days. They are passing things. They are always brief. And in the world of library nerds like me, in the world of books and of letters, ephemera are the small things made of paper that pass through your hands every day. Stamps, movie tickets, cocktail napkins you may once have jotted someone's number on, Post-it notes, birthday cards, actual real live printed photographs. And so when some noted personage donates their papers to the library, or the family of some noted personage finally unloads all the things in the attic, the ephemera show up inevitably at the bottom of the box, often chipped and creased, sometimes waiting decades until somebody has the time and the patience to catalog them. The ephemera of our lives are, according to scholar Sarah Wasserman, objects that signal their own disappearance. They are items that are always letting you know by their very nature that they will not be around forever. They are the little things, kept by accident or by happenstance, or because somebody actively chose to squirrel them away. They are the little things that survive not because they are monumental, but because they just happen to keep being there. Ephemera are the transient evidence of the lives we are actually living, not the big ticket evidence of the marks we are always trying to make on great and defining things, or the stuff people will write in your obituary. It is not the highlights of your CV, it is the everydayness. They are evidence of actual lived history, what we spend our time really doing, and in some ways these passing things, these little bits of life, give more accurate evidence of who we actually are than any published manuscript, any research report ever could. In this way, studying the little things, the passing things, the ephemera is a way of connecting to our actual history. Not our curated, performed, polished up history marked by the high points and the low ones, but the actual moment-to-moment experience of our living. How we spend our days is, after all, how we spend our lives, Annie Dillard reminds us. What we do with this hour, with that one, is what we are actually doing. And the ephemera of our lives have a way of catching us in the act of actually living, which is why, perhaps, they have always been worthy of our blessing, even though we so seldom notice them as they slip right through our hands. As Wasserman states, because the things aren't meant to last, someone has to decide they are meaningful. They are not meant to leave a remainder. Like almost every single real thing in life, you have to choose to give ephemeral things meaning. You have to decide which moments in your life matter, even as they pass you by. Because the things we are actually doing, the daily passing realities of every moment, they do not inherently signal to us their meaning. We have to slow down and choose to notice. We have to love them as they go. We have to experience them because the fact they are always leaving us behind is the source of their beauty, a lesson we sometimes learn only too late. There's a classic Buddhist folktale of a man being chased by a tiger. The guy runs, like anyone would ever in all history of time. He runs and that ravenous tiger chases right behind him. He runs until he comes to the edge of a massive cliff and he flings himself over that chasm, the gnashing teeth of the tiger right behind him, only to catch himself against all likelihood on a single clinging vine on the edge of that cliff face. And he hangs there looking up at the tiger above and hears below his dangling feet a sound just as loud and terrifying as the growling from over his head. He looks down and what is below him but another tiger. Just as large and just as fierce and just as ravenous, he is dangling there between two inevitabilities. He is dangling there where all of us are dangling, and he clings to that vine for dear life and happens to notice that on a little lip of stone above him, a mouse is nibbling away at his precious vine. Yes, it is all happening, friends, right in that moment. It is happening, and it is then as he curses the mouse, momentarily forgetting the tigers, that he also sees on that tiny lip of rock a single perfect strawberry. Pure and beautiful, as glorious as ever a strawberry was. There is no reason to doubt his fate. The end has never been any different. It is awaiting in either direction, and yet, perhaps the story tells us it's the moments between the inevitabilities that matter, because he plucks that strawberry with the last of his strength. And he tastes in that brief moment something so glorious, so pure, and so beautiful that it blesses the whole act of his living. There were 1,000, 1,000,000 strawberries before that one. Ephemeral things passing through that man's grasp. But none is sweet, because in that moment he did what we all can do. He knew that this sweetness can only be fully appreciated as it passes. For that one taste of a bright and brief berry, for a day at the beach, or a Sunday morning spent among friends. For all of these passing things, even the immortal gods might look down from their perpetual heaven and eat their hearts out in jealousy, wishing for the magnificence you know. So who are we to spend our days brooding about the end of the story when it always ends the same? Who are we to spend our time fearing the inevitable when right now the whole point of things, the very marrow of life, spins over and around us, inviting us to break out of our fear and into a sense of pure wonder that all of it, every passing bit of it, is ours for the taking, and the only thing we have to give up in exchange is the shallow comfort of assuming permanence that was never there to begin with. It was Wallace Stevens who once said that death is the mother of beauty. I have never been much for places that do not have seasons. I have never felt too compelled to live where it is perpetually 78 and sunny. And here, right here, when the leaves will shortly turn to flame in October, that brief interval of life will be played out again before us, reminding us of the vastness in which all of our endings and beginnings are caught, reminding us of the ephemeral things, including ourselves, which are always passing, always waiting for the meaning that we must choose to give them while we are here. In the on-demand era, when every form of media is at our fingertips in any given moment, do you know there is an entire decade of early American television that only aired once and was never recorded? Do you know that every American has read the Gettysburg Address, that it is literally chiseled in stone at the Lincoln Memorial, but no one alive remembers the tentative whispered tone of Lincoln's actual voice as he was speaking it? Do you know that Marilyn Monroe had an actual life beyond what was captured and consumed on the screen? Do you know that the whole point of jazz is that you will never hear it just that way again? These passing things, these things which are so rarely curated and recalled, these inexorably moving, inherently brief things are so sacred and beautiful. The fact that Lincoln whispered his words is as meaningful, perhaps, as the fact that history decided to write them in stone. Like this summer, which is just about in the books, and this fall, which is quickly on its way, we are invited to embrace the passing things so that we can embrace our own passing existence, to bless the wonder of each ephemeral thing and give it meaning, because the actual moments that comprise our lives are not going to give meaning to themselves. So we raise a toast in breakable glasses. As the poet wrote, to all things brief and fragile, we celebrate this morning the art of losing, the wonder of all that we let go, as we move in this sea of ephemeral things, all that signals its eventual demise, including ourselves. And this moment, we revel in the wonder of it all, and we celebrate the glorious interval we are given between inevitabilities, the place where all the meaning gets made. Amen, and blessed be.